The shoulders stop rotating at 90 degrees. You can see it here. And the feet get into position to finish the rotation. All right. Sometimes the animations in session just don't cut it, to my taste, alright? Now, being the obsessive person that I am, I've recorded 5 different ways of doing flat ground tricks that I've found. Some are gonna be obvious, some are gonna be a little bit less known. Hopefully you're gonna learn something from this and integrate it into your own gameplay. I went and pre-recorded a line in which I did all 5, one after the other. And we're gonna take a look at this right now and see how they look. We're not filming it or anything, we're just taking a look at the animations themselves and comparing them. So we're gonna go over all 5 pretty quickly just so you can see what we're working with. Then we're gonna go back and compare the 5 different ways amongst themselves so we can really note the differences. So the very first one, I set all my stats to absolute neutral default. When I did the trick, I used the trigger for the rotation and let go of it mid-trick so that we stop the rotation in the air. The next one, I set my rotation rate to absolute 0 and I held the rotation trigger the entire time without letting it go. The next one is one that I believe is a little less well known. Mind you, I have about 3 or 4 ticks of rotation rate at this point out of like 20. And I press the rotation trigger all the way in, fully let go midway, and then fully press it again. And what that does is we catch the trick, shoulders stay 90 degrees, but the feet finish the rotation. The next one is a little bit similar, where we start 90 degrees, we let go of the rotation trigger, and we use the backside board slide input to finish the rotation. And the last one is gonna be just a late revert, alright? So 90 degrees, revert to end. That's the 5 ones. Now let's go all the way back. The main thing about the first one is it can look good on flat, but if you're doing it over a gap, stopping your rotation mid-air and just waiting for the landing doesn't really respect the laws of physics, alright? You can't just stop rotating mid-air. So obviously you can press the rotation trigger gently and compensate for it, or you can use less rotation rate, which allows you to fully press your trigger and leave it fully pressed during the entire time. And already this tiny difference of landing over rotation, under rotation, that is good. This is the kind of variation we want to add in our clips if we're trying to push for realism. Now, here's where things get interesting. The third one, so the repress, where you let go of the rotation trigger fully mid-air and then fully press it in again. I'm going to remind you I have about 3 or 4 ticks of rotation rate at this point out of like 20. The shoulders stop rotating at 90 degrees. You can see it here. And the feet get into position to finish the rotation. Alright? Now, this is something that we see often, a lot in real life, especially for beginner, maybe intermediate level skaters, where they have to compensate for the fact that it's not exactly comfortable to do a full rotation, especially backside. And if we look from the top, we can see it. Even the first one, you can fully see it. Full rotation with the shoulders. But the third one, the repress, shoulders stay 90 degrees, feet finish the rotation. Again, this is to make some variety in terms of footwork now. That is good. This is the kind of variation we want to add in our clips if we're trying to push for realism. Now, if we go to the fourth one with the board slide input, the main difference here is the fact that we use both feet to catch the board and finish the rotation, alright? The shoulders are still staying 90 degrees, alright? So this posture is actually very accurate and true to real life. The fact that we use our arms to swing them around to compensate for the lack of rotation. This is something that I love to see. And if we compare it to the third one, you can see that we're catching it with only one foot. And this is also very accurate. You're always going to want to use the popping foot to catch your flip tricks, even if it's for a rotation. Plus, this posture, you see the right arm going way up there to compensate for the lack of rotation. Again, I love to see it. Now there's a small drawback to number 3 and number 4 is this. Look in slow-mo how fast the head gets into the landing animation, alright? The landing animation is triggered, the entire upper body is forced into that animation. And that is a big drawback in my book, especially here you can see it, it's almost instant even with slow-mo. So I tend to use these techniques when I know that I'm going to focus on just the footwork, alright? And I don't need to actually show the head or anything. So they look super clean when we go from one to the other and we don't show the head. It's really sick. And as for number 5, the late revert, basically I have 2 things to say. First one is, let's just compare it to number 4, where it's basically catching with 2 feet and finishing the rotation. Number 4 is the same thing, catch with 2 feet, finish the rotation. It's just one happens mid-air, the other one happens on flat. But the thing about the late revert, I'll be honest, is the one that I experimented with the least, because check this out, alright? Look at the janky animation here. I'm not even gonna try to be nice about it, alright? We have the head going up and down, and that's because it's calculating between the landing animation and the revert animation. So it's trying to trigger both at once, and it's sort of doing both at once. Now it settles for the revert animation. This is what we got here, alright? And as soon as the landing happens and the revert stops, it just goes into neutral. So the revert animation gets cancelled, just like you would in Street Fighter. But in this case, animation cancels are no bueno. All of these 3 animations do have their place, but one after the other in such a short amount of time, jank. Just good old textbook jank. And especially when you're writing fakie like this game doesn't actually take fakie posture into account at all. So since there's no animation for it, the feet just hover back into neutral position for regular. And again, no bueno. You have to compensate for that with camera work, with something. Honestly, that's gonna be it. Those were the examples that I had in mind. Here, I have some pre-recorded gameplay while we talk, because I can't talk and be coherent in this game at the same time, alright? One of the 2 is gonna suffer, and it's not a pretty thing to watch. So one of the things that I absolutely love about this game is something that I started calling the meta gameplay, alright? Now I'm referring to everything that has to do with this game, but is outside of the actual gameplay in the game itself. So obviously making an edit and posting clips online is a big part of it, and the whole community surrounding this game is absolutely insane. But there's also this realism thing, alright, that everybody and their dog talks about, which is whatever needs to be done in order to make a trick reflect real life, alright? How it would be done and how it would look in real life, alright? Now I consider this meta gameplay because it's not necessary to do this in the actual game, and you have to use real life reference somewhere. Now whenever I shift into high gear in terms of realism, and I really try to push it as far as I can, to the best of my ability, I find myself sometimes redoing a trick over and over again, even if I land it, just to make it look slightly different from what the original animation is intended to look like, just so that I can get that little bit of extra reference to what I've seen in other skate videos and stuff like that. I do intend to make another bunch of these videos where we cover grinds and different ways to make grinds look good. Grinds, slides, whatever, you know, hurricane, stuff like that. Having a proper looking hurricane, that's going to be a big one, because it's not just 180 over Willy, alright? You have to actually be doing a shoulder motion in order to make it look good. And there will be videos about how to trick the game into doing the proper animation for a hurricane and other good tricks like that. Until then, patience for your practice, as always at this point, and I'll see you in the next one.